module.
That would be big news, but nope.
All right, so go with whatever lesser news you're going to do then.
That would be big news. But nope.
What time is it there, Kyle? I know it's 4 PST. What is it there?
7 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to sleep and now I wake up and it's like it's a whole new day in the United States. That's for damn sure.
Isn't there threats of like a coup or something in Thailand at the moment or something?
But it's so polite.
Like the polite coup.
I mean, I say that in jest, but it's also pretty serious. Like, they honestly, all the parties that are against each other just decided to get together and have a meeting.
Yeah.
And former prime ministers are also going to be involved, so they can weigh in and help things out so it smoothly transitions.
Yeah, yeah.
And even, I mean, there's nothing like, I mean, you might have heard about protests in Bangkok. I know people who live in Bangkok and they're like, I have not seen one protest. Like, they are here somewhere, but it's so organized and polite that they really don't. I think the most disruptive is they shut down the subway system for a day or so.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was it. It was just a sit down in the terminal or in the platforms. But there's like nothing in Chiang Mai. People are just pretty, and then there's no angst towards any kind of the foreigner population. So,
oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's just more like they're trying to sort things out. It was really hilarious though. I remember like there are a few things being protested, like how the democracy kind of functions, but also the money that the monarchy has. And then there's students are concerned also about like how the school education system works. And on that front, the education minister was like, yeah, you're right. We've got some things we can work out. Let's do it. Was the response. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, yeah. All right. They're quite polite when all this is going on.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of SEO Fight Club. Again, I apologize about the time changes. We're just trying to figure out our new normal because we definitely don't want to lose Kyle because he's on the other side of the planet. So that's kind of why we had to figure this out. We had to make it workable so we can keep the team together. Clint won't be here today. We caught him off guard with the rapid time change, but he will be back next week. So unfortunately, no Clint today. Maybe he'll hop on a bit later if he gets home in time. But no worries on that. The plan is to have all three of the show founders, together with the show. That's why we're doing the time change. So with that, we have an awesome topic, but we'll get through our boilerplate really quickly. So we don't have Clint here today, so we'll talk about SEO this week, next week. If you haven't heard of it, it's a cool show. Just go to YouTube, search for SEO this week. Dre DeVera's show is awesome. It's taken off. He's doing the killer SEO interviews. He's doing SEO interviews better than anyone has ever done SEO interviews before. And he's almost to 1,000 subscribers. So he's like at 850. So it's that final push to get him to 1,000 so we can get the next batch of YouTube streamer features and perks on being able to create content. So if you haven't subscribed to his channel yet, please do. He's within striking distance of that vital milestone, and it's really great. And Kyle, don't you have something coming up with him soon?
Yeah, I think this weekend is his best guest ever, which would be me.
Nice.
So,
the long-awaited Kyle Roof.
If this doesn't get him over to the one, nothing will. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Well, if you haven't heard Kyle's story, it is a story to hear. So this is probably an interview that you would probably have to pay a high-priced SEO conference ticket and airfare and hotel accommodations and food and taxi fares. So normally to hear this story, so this is a way to avoid all that cost. So I would guess that the retail value of this interview is probably around $4,000 per person, totally free. Check this one out. Did I get it accurately?
I think so. I would have gone a little higher than 4K, but it's all right.
Well, airfares are cheap right now.
That's right. You know, airfares are struggling. Airlines are struggling.
Depends if you go first class.
What if you like share a room?
Yeah, exactly. You can get those costs down. So, Kyle, what's going on with IMG? There's like a lot going on.
Well, after you watch Dre's show, if any questions pop up, you can ask those questions directly to me next Tuesday with the Ask Me Anything, or the Ask the Expert, I think we're calling it, to not infringe. But yeah, so we've got that going on. And also there's a pro tip this Friday, and it's with Brennan. If you're on these streams, Brennan is a regular fixture. And so he works in an agency. He's got a pro tip, and that should be fantastic. And also, Ted, as you know, at the end of this month, we're hoping to launch the courses section, where I know that you have a brand new course and I have a brand new course, and people that are in the membership area, just paying the monthly subscription, will get 100% access to those two brand new courses.
Yeah, you're kind of leaking the big secret that
just leak that little part.
A paid membership doesn't get you access to just the community. It gets you access to dozens of courses and other content, all for one low price.
That's right.
And that's coming up. And there's even more news than that.
Yeah. But I'm really excited, though. I think, so I've been through your course.
What do you think? Is it garbage?
It's definitely a course. No, it's fantastic. I'm excited to be able to when we tell people about this, that both you and I have a brand new course. I think it's just fun. You know, when we do Fight Club, and when we do like the testing and all that, a lot of that is theory. A lot of that is what's going on. And what's nice about the courses is, okay, this is the theory, and then we've taken that and we've done it. Now this is how you can do it too. You know, it kind of, I think, bridges that learning gap on, you know, when you hear something, I know that people aren't hearing the same things that you are. So you've been able to process the tests that we have. You've been able to process the research we've done in Fight Club and all that, and taking that and say, okay, this is how you can actually apply it, or these are things you can do. So I really like that it takes it that kind of next step on these other things we've got going on, where the knowledge is gained. Now this is how you can apply the knowledge.
Well, and with my course in particular, I tried to do something that I've never done before. I've taken a topic and I tried to bring it way back down to earth. So I got all of the geek speak down to a minimal amount, and just, this is how it works in the plainest way possible.
Very cool.
Very cool. So yeah, I'm excited to see what everyone thinks about it. My course is on link building, and so hopefully, if you're having trouble with that, you know, you'll have to look for that in the next month.
Fantastic.
All right, so to our topic. So we're going to talk about a race to prove a new type of Google update. And this is a contest that people probably aren't hearing about, you know, don't even know about it until right now. But it's been 6 months in the making, and people have been working towards this goal without even knowing they were doing it. And it all came out of the testing community, and it's just one of those gems that I feel is so important, we just have to share it. So when we talk about Google updates, you've probably heard me say in the past year that there are different kinds of updates. We have algorithm updates, which include things that affect your rank position in the search results. There's search intent updates, which is kind of how Google figures out, what kinds of documents you're trying to get at. And so with the search intent, you'll see things like BERT and rank brain, those types of algorithms where you type in what are the animals at the top of the food chain called, and Google understands that and says, oh, they want to see search results for apex predators. So that's the search intent. The next type of update is meta blending updates. And this is how Google tries to blend the various types of searches. So there's local search, there's ad search, there's actually ad search involved here. There's featured snippet, there's the map pack, there's people also ask. These are all different kinds of search engines, and Google is creating a meta environment where it does a sprinkle of this kind, a dash of that kind, and pushes them all together. And so meta blending updates are when Google changes that mix. So when Google took organic results from 10 on page 1 down to 8, that was a meta blending update. When Google said that if you get the featured snippet, you couldn't be in the first page of Google results, that's a meta blending update. When Google took the ads and took them from the sidebar and put them on top of all the organic results, that was a blend. That was also a meta blending update, but it was also an HTML update. So that's kind of the meta blending side of things. Then there are HTML updates, which are changes to the web design of the search results. And these updates are very common, and they're notorious for breaking rank trackers. Because once you change that HTML, for a lot of the tools out there, the parsers stop working. And all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my God, I have no rankings. The sky is falling. But if you actually manually check on those occasions, you'll find that nothing has changed. Google just did a web design change and your rank tracker doesn't parse it anymore. And then the last kind of update that we've known about are infrastructure updates. Like, this month we got a whole new search console. Hooray. That's infrastructure. If Google makes performance improvements to Googlebot, that's infrastructure. They put all of search on newer, faster servers, that's infrastructure. And so there are updates like that as well. So these are kind of the categories of how Google can update search, and we're better at detecting some of them than others. And some of them we don't really know about unless Google tells us. And so there are different ways where we get clues about these kinds of updates. But now we think there's a new kind of update, and we don't get new kinds of updates very often. So we'll start explaining what it is. So for years, and I mean years, going back to maybe as far as like 2007, I've been pulling data about the HTML specification and how Google sorts the tags and the attributes that are in the HTML spec. And we have this data going back a long, long time. And there's lots of interesting things, like when the title tag matches the document name and the URL, it's kind of a really powerful combination, has a sum of the parts, the outcome, the Gestalt effect. It ends up having extra power than it should have. when you just look at those individual components, things like that we've seen for a long time. But really what it all boiled down to with all that testing was that we largely just learned that like title, URL, and headings were special. So all that testing, all those years, just got a lot of confusing data, except for title, URL, and headings always seem to rise near the top. And we didn't really learn a lot from it, but we thought it was always important to watch. And it turns out it was important to watch. So earlier this year, in our testing group, in the IMG testing group, we had a tester who was testing some of the fringe SEO practices that my software measures. And so he's like, I want to see if that works in testing. And so he is looking at putting keywords into CSS class attributes. And he came back and said, this isn't a factor. It doesn't even index. And so how could it boost your page, if it doesn't even index? And so this didn't sit well with me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, this bugs me, and I don't know why. I couldn't figure out why, because I know that there was a time when this worked great. So I created some will it index tests based on hearing that this doesn't work. I'm like, well, okay, let's see if that doesn't work. I want to try to reproduce his results. So I created my own test pages to see if these various types of zones will index or not. And I put in some test ones, some ringers, like the title tag. Wasn't expecting soft 404 to index because it didn't about a week ago, but now it's indexing again. Alt attributes did index. So at least the alt attribute and the title tag were ringers. We knew they'd work. But these other ones we were unsure of, like HTML comments, the class attributes, custom HTML5 tags, things of that nature.
Ed,
And so,
can
yep.
you explain the difference between, because this is a little bit different type of test than most people are used to seeing. When you're talking about a will it index, how is that different from a ranking test?
Well, with a ranking test, you're trying to prove that something gives a boost to rank position. And you have to have some statistical certainty that you're not seeing a random outcome. And so to say that the boost is actually happening and not just a random outcome, you have to run the test multiple times and they all have to agree on the results statistically. With a will it index test, it's a Boolean test. Because if you put in a CSS class attribute an imaginary keyword that no one in the universe has ever used for, if you find it in search, it indexed. So you don't have to run it statistically. You don't have to run it 15 times. If it happens once, you've made your case. And so that's all I'm doing with this test is saying, will it index?
Giving away a testing secret. These are all the tests that I run because they're easy.
So, this information is very important because, the difference between knowing if a hypothetical factor gives a ranking boost versus will it index, it doesn't mean that it's not beneficial if it doesn't give a ranking boost. So if it indexes at all, it could contribute to the relevancy. So your keyword density, your TF, IDF, it can expand your keyword reach. So those zones could have keywords that your page could appear for, and it could have cloaking benefits, as a lot of these zones aren't visible in the content of the page. So even if it doesn't have a boost to boost you higher than someone, the fact that it will index can have a lot of beneficial abilities for SEO. So a will it index test is actually quite informative. But that's for another time. I want to get on with the new type of Google update. So it didn't sit well with me, it turns out, because in those years of archives of looking at the HTML specification, almost all of these things indexed as late as earlier this year. So we have years of data where all these things that don't index now, they did index recently. And so that's remarkable that we got rankings on these things and now we don't. And this is new evidence that there are certain zones of the web page that are being barred from indexing. If you put keywords in those banned areas of a page, those keywords will not expand your keyword reach. Those keywords will not be findable in Google search. So there are parts of the page that appear to be off limits for indexing. And that's a new concept. So now, in addition to those other 5 types of updates, we have zoning updates. There are zones of a page that can be made, off limits or allowed, and Google can change those definitions. So now we need to monitor if Google is changing the allowed zones of a page. And that's the new type of update. But there's one caveat, because I know what the vast majority of the people out there are going to say. Isn't zoning just part of the algorithm as it is? Wouldn't this be part of the algorithm update? And the answer to that is maybe not. Keyword density is comprised of a keyword count and a word count from the page. And everybody calculates keyword density differently. Some people will include the image alt text in keyword density. Some people won't. Some people will include the meta description test in keyword density. Some people won't. So depending upon how you calculate that density is whether or not you include those zones. Same thing with term frequency and TF-IDF. Even though indexing might not use those zones of the page, things like term frequency and keyword density, which have been shown to work, still might. So when a test tries to use keywords in the class attributes and it doesn't index, that doesn't necessarily mean that it still doesn't boost the page. It means that test needed to be indexed via different means first so you could even see if it had a boosting effect. So now you have to test, will it index before you try to say, will it boost? And all of the times where we said it's not a factor because it didn't even index, those may not be true. Those might be inconclusive. And we need more testing because we don't know the answers to this. We still need to prove this is the case. And if the no index zones of a page still contribute to keyword density and TF-IDF and boost a test result, then zoning updates and algorithm updates can happen independently of each other. They can even be configured differently. Indexing could disallow a zone, but the algorithm could boost a page by content in that same zone. We have to test them independently. And if we can find an example of a page being boosted from a no index zone, we have proven the new type of update. And that's why I say the race is on to prove a new type of update. We have the evidence that there's zoning. What we don't have is the proof that zoning is separate from and independent of the ranking algorithm. And so in 2021, there may be new best practices in SEO. Things like, oh, when you're trying to get your page indexed, do not use this list of zones. But once it's indexed, when you go to boost it, do use those zones I just told you not to use. And that's brand new to SEO. So, what do you guys think of that? What's your initial impressions?
Let's go play.
Yeah, I think it matches exactly what we're seeing. Like it's a succinct explanation of what's been observed in the tests that have been run, for sure.
I think it raises a lot of interesting questions. So let's suppose that the zoning update, the algorithm updates are in fact independent and they can be configured differently. What reason would Google have to do it that way other than two groups don't talk to each other?
It could very well be two groups that don't talk to each other. The people that work on caffeine might not do the ranking algorithm.
So Ted, if you were trying to, let's say, keep track of what was in or out, you would keep tests like this just sort of flying out there like a flag, right? To see what's happening.
Yeah, and that's going to be another new part of SEO is everybody's going to be working to build the authoritative dashboard of will it index. That's going to feed the future of SEO software. You know, which outputs do I need to show you? Well, probably first and foremost, the will it index outputs. And then in testing, it kind of changes the game because testing will it boost is a very expensive way to test. And most of the time, like 80% of the value we're after will come from a will it index test. We still want to know will it boost, but if we can just get it will it index much faster, that's a game changer. What do you think about that, Lee?
I think it's an interesting idea. You know, I'm thinking, and right now I'm just designing tests in my head that would go after trying to find situations where, you know, it would index but not boost, not index but boost. You know, all of those, you know, permutations and exactly how, and then thinking a little further down the road, how people would use that to not be white hat. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah,
So,
the ramifications of will it index do have a lot of black hat for certain types of zones, and I could understand why Google would want to limit those zones. But I think, you know, Google's primary reason for doing this, I think, is to cut down the size of the indexes. If they could eliminate all of the keywords that are in, you know, HTML comments, that's a lot of keywords they don't have to throw in the database. And HTML comments, as you saw on that earlier slide, those used to index, and they don't appear to index anymore.
well, even in those zones, I mean, we've had these conversations for a while. When you're looking at keyword density, you know, something in a particular zone might contribute to the numerator, the denominator, or both, depending. And, you know, we've never really tested in that way either.
Yeah, and this is a new this is a new problem for keyword density tools. Like anyone who's measuring keyword density now probably wants to know, will it index and does it influence the keyword density score that Google's using? And now we can test for those things. We could actually use this information to start dissecting what parts of the page contribute to keyword density and what parts don't. And the what parts don't need to come out of your keyword density tool. Because if you're calculating with something that Google doesn't use, then that's not good intel.
Mm-hmm.
And that affects me. That affects, probably Pop. You do keyword density calculations.
We do it by zone though, so I think we're
okay. So you're already zoned.
already safe.
Okay.
we're ahead of the curve. We've been zoning for years.
There you go. So yeah, it's gonna be a really interesting thing. Like, especially now that you would have to separate, are you using keywords in zones that don't work? Are you putting keywords in zones that do for indexing? And what's that list? And another thing that it impacts is diversity. Like, are ignored zones contributing to the factor diversity of the page, which still appears to be a thing, but it might be a less of a thing if Google is barring zones of a page. So it's a complicating factor for getting to the root of, factor diversity as a factor.
If some of these indexed years ago and some of them indexed months ago, how do we test for the volatility of when these updates, how often they happen, if they only happen more often in this zone and less often at that zone? Or
I think the bulk of what people will want to know is what works right now. Where can I put a keyword and get a page to index for that keyword? And if we had a dashboard that said all these zones are green and all these other zones are red, I think that's the info that everybody wants. And that's probably the info that a lot of tool sets will want to feed, because they'll want to report that having your keyword in these areas helps you index and helps give you keyword reach, or has cloaking benefits. But these other ones don't. You lose the benefit by investing time there. And you don't want to recommend zones that have no benefit.
Right. But you'd also have to, I think what Terry's getting at is, like, on the 15th of the month, you launch the 50 factor tests again to see if they're indexing now versus, last month. And that's how you track it over time, is some periodic relaunch the same test with new keywords and see if it indexes or not.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. Do you have to relaunch, or will Google de-index when it changes the rules? And that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love it if we could just make all these tests live and leave them live, and then they just come in and out of play on their own as Google sees fit.
Ted, one other thing I would toss in here is that when you look at index, the idea of a page appearing in SERPs, a lot of that goes to Google understanding the page. It has to understand what this page is about, that's about this particular query, to put it in there, which would mean that the zones would go to relevance as a separate part of it. So when Google understands the page, it'd be looking at specific places. I could see that it would make sense that Google wouldn't really want to put in HTML classes to understand what a page is about. But when it comes to ranking, as it's trying to then build, is this the right page? Do I like this page better? Which is what rank is. Then it would then consider those things. So the zoning aspect on the index would really go towards helping Google understand what this page is about. And I could see the limiting factor where they maybe just want to look at the title, see what those images are all about, and that kind of thing, and really clue in on those areas for the indexing purpose. And then rank would kind of throw everything back into the soup and calculate from there.
Yeah, and restricting where it will draw content from the page to index. I mean, that's a massive reduction of what will go into the index. That's evidence of Google being a lot more selective. And I have these other theories on the side that the primary index is struggling to scale, and I have a growing body of evidence that Google's having a hard time with scalability. This would kind of be supporting evidence that primary index is having issues.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. We have a couple questions here. Will this live stream be available later? Yes, it'll be on the YouTube channel under live events. I'll try to add it to the channel playlist so it appears easily. Kyle, your old course, is it obsolete?
100%. It's actually pretty evergreen. The thing, and we've talked about this, Ted, at length, is that Google can't change the core part of the algorithm. When you look at a bell curve of what's in there, they're really going after that fringe part, that 10% on either side that people are trying to game. But the middle part is cost prohibitive to change. And I think my course covers really what's in that kind of evergreen will pretty much always be kind of chunk area.
Well, if you want, can you spill the secret? Does rhinoplasty plano still work?
Yeah, it does. It still ranks.
Even after all the updates?
Not that one, but yeah. So as you know the story, I redid the experiment in 5 different cities that I spoke in last year, and they're all still ranking. Some quite well.
And your old course covers a lot of those principles, right?
Exactly right. That how could you do this? And really what it comes down to are the things that I talk about all the time, that it's an algorithm. It's not reading. It can't read like a human. It has to read in forms of math. And so if you give it the math that it wants, you will be successful. And that's not to say, I get into the course too, like you do need to write good content. Let's be real. You do need to have human beings convert. Otherwise, I don't know what we're doing here. But that is a separate concept from actually getting a page to rank. Mm-hmm. And understanding that distinction is, I think, a big step forward for a lot of people in the SEO that they're going to do.
Yep.
So, Kyle, we know that Ted's new course is on link building. Your old course is on page. What's your new course?
I did a whole course on white hat SEO, diving into actually the guidelines, because I think a lot of SEOs like to say like everything's black hat, and that's not true. If that were true, that's what Google's guidelines would say. Guideline number 1, everything you do is black hat, and they don't. They actually list guidelines. Are they as instructive as we would like them to be? No. And they, I think, at times are intentionally vague to give them wiggle room on how to structure themselves. But there are things that are clearly within the guidelines. So, of course, talks about what's in the guidelines, but then also provides a path for effective SEO that is completely within Google's guidelines. So that you can, I think you'll be able to do 2 things. Make a judgment call. Am I in bounds or out of bounds? Because I actually don't think there's very much gray space, to be honest with you. The people that are in a gray space are lying to themselves, that they're outside the guidelines and they just want to feel better because they don't think it's wrong. That's where I think they're at. But it's really kind of in the guidelines or not. I think it's pretty clear where the lines are drawn in terms of a lot of things, and then you can decide what you want to do. But within the course, so there's kind of those definitions, but then there's also, this is a strategy that you can do that's effective, and showing what a comprehensive strategy could look like. And what I also like too is we get into the concepts of who cares about link metrics. Let's look at traffic. When we're not as focused on like what's the DR, TF, or U whatever. Like once you get rid of those ideas and you focus on traffic, a thought that I had was, isn't that what it should be anyway? Like, aren't we actually just trying to get traffic to, like, real traffic to sites? I thought that might have been the goal, but it's easy to see how the SEO community might have just really just taken a jump off a cliff when really focusing in on something that maybe isn't even all that important.
Right. Cool.
So another question we have is, are the parts of the page that don't index the same or different for different screen sizes, mobile, PC, etc.? And that's a very good question, because you can index for a keyword on desktop that won't index on mobile, and vice versa, or both, or neither. There's a lot of different states of being for a URL and a keyword combination within the index. And so a lot of people like to say, well, that's separate from indexing, that's ranking. Well, it is and it isn't. But we did not check, for the sake of this content I presented today, between mobile and desktop. I primarily looked at desktop only because it tends to be easier to rank for. And that was my rationale on the will it index. I just wanted to get, is it possible at all? And that was the easier path to go down.
Ed, do we know that the zones don't differ based on search intent or based on other factors in a given keyword?
We don't. We have no idea if the rules are dynamic. And so that's another area where some basic testing would be just amazing. If we found a discovery like that, the rules change based on intent, that would be a big breakthrough. The Google passages then fit into the zones you're talking about. Well, we're waiting to see. The problem with the passage ranking that's been recently announced is we don't have examples of it. The screen pictures they used in those were hypothetical analogs to what it might look like, and not actual examples. So we actually don't know what the snippets are. We'll need to analyze them once they're launched and figure out where they come from and what rules apply to them. And then it's quite plausible that, yeah, those would be considered a special zone of the page. Let's see, here's a question. Do you think any purchased links are white hat? Well, everything costs you time. And so in a way, everything has a cost. So, at the end of the day, if you go out and try to, muster up support for organically linking, promoting awareness, if you buy pay-per-click ads to say my blog post is great, and then somebody sees the ad, agrees with you, and puts a link up, that link had a cost. Now, it comes down to what does Google think is appropriate paid links versus not, and I think it's the ones where you say openly and brazenly, I will give you a link for $12. By the way, I will give you a link for $12. It won't be a powerful link, but
Yeah, this is a topic that is covered within my course, and for those that want to join IMG to get 100% access, now would be the time, or at least at the end of the month when we launch.
There you go. And Kyle will go into it much more than I will as a rambling fool on the topic. But I think whatever Google dislikes is black hat. That's my definition of anything that angers the bear is black hat. And Google reserves the right to change their mind at any time on what pisses them off. So,
yeah, that's a big point, that these aren't written in stone.
Yeah.
It's as soon as they want to change it, they're allowed to.
And in fact, didn't they do just that because of rhinoplasty plano?
Yeah, and I show that in the course too, which was pretty amazing that they actually rewrote a rule. Coincidentally, about 10 days after the test ended, or the contest ended.
Nice. So you don't consider rhinoplasty plano gray hat there, Kyle?
No, I can tell you it is certainly black hat, but it wasn't. It wasn't at the time, but they have rewritten a rule that is now a black hat technique.
Let's see.
That doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing it. I'm not taking anything down.
Somebody wants to know when Google Search Console will let us request indexing again. All I can say is that there have been reports that a few modern indexing solutions have worked. Omega Indexer is one of the ones I've heard. I have not tried it, so I don't actually know. But that's one I seem to hear a lot in the groups. And I've also heard that if you're doing sitemaps, it works best if you use an XML sitemap specifically and you update the last modified dates. And people have been having luck with that. I've also seen that updates are very quick for already existing URLs. So a lot of the problems with indexing right now are largely hurting new URLs. So if you can get away with modifying an old page that never worked and leaving the URL the same and putting the new content on there and linking to it however you like on your own website, that might be a fast track to getting that information updated and found in search instead of trying to launch a new page. Somebody else says, important to remember black hat has nothing to do with morality. Yeah, a lot of people want you to think that black hat is synonymous with crime and hacking and fraud, and that's actually not the case. Those things are crime and hacking and fraud, and those are illegal and should be illegal and not something that we condone. Black hat from an SEO context simply means these are practices that Google frowns upon. They are not against the law. They are things that Google says we don't like them, and we are Google, and so we will leverage our opinion on our systems if you do the things we don't like. They're not crimes. They're just against the guidelines.
You know, one of the thoughts on that too is, what if I'm trying to rank a page in Yandex? And Yandex has different guidelines, so I stay within their guidelines, but then Google ranks the page, you know, with stuff that I know is outside of Google's guidelines, but inside of Yandex. Do I have to call somebody? You know, do I have to alert the presses, you know, or is that my responsibility? You know what I mean? Like when you get into like kind of those kind of ethics discussions, people really do want to say that black hat is immoral. No, crimes are immoral. You know, where, like you just said, if you hack somebody, that's a trespass, you know, or you've done some sort of damage to their site. That's a tort. That's probably immoral. But getting in or outside of the Google's guidelines has nothing really to do with any kind of moral position.
And Kyle, you don't have to call anyone because they've got their eye on you anyway, so you won't have to call them.
Probably too. I hope at this point I have an entire team in Mountain View that's just monitoring what I do, and the guy's like, my PhD was worth it. You know, like,
Kyle watch.
Someone asks, does IMG have links to people you recommend, i.e. someone to set up my AdWords? The great thing about IMG is that you can go in there and you can ask, you know, Kyle a question directly, or you could ask 500 internet marketing professionals what their opinion is. So we do have a list of tools. We don't go into recommendations, but just go into IMG and create a post and say, hey, can anyone give me recommendations for X, Y, and Z? And you will be amazed at the quality and caliber of the recommendations you get. One of the people who might respond would be our very own Simon White, who's a tools master, who's probably tried more tools than anyone I know of. He's in there, and, you know, just ask a question. The most important thing you can do in any SEO group is ask questions, because when you do, you're putting the whole community to work for you, and that's what you really want to do. With that, I think we'll call it a show. I want to thank everyone for joining. I hope this was an exciting topic for you. It was mind-blowing for me. So I was really excited to get to share it. Any final thoughts or goodbyes?
Oh, all good. See you guys next week.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
Good job, Ted. Nice
Thanks
work.
a lot,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.